Guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and you are watching The Nerdy Grail. Now, this is a first for me, and this is the first time I've ever done a video like this. Today we are going to be doing a video game review, because I have just finished playing the brand new game which came out on Friday, October 25th, Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, I got it on the PS5, and this is, I don't know, a bit of a remaster, remake of a game that came out in 2011, Sonic Generations, which this is on the PS3, which this was to celebrate 20 years of Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's a very, very interesting game, so I thought I would do a review on it and give you my thoughts. Now, how I'm actually going to do this is we're going to break it down into three different areas. The first thing that we're going to be discussing is we're going to be talking about a bit about the background of how this game came to be, how it formed, and the history behind the original Sonic Generations. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the gameplay, what's changed from this game to the original, and how it fares. And then finally, we're going to take a deep dive into the actual story of Sonic Generations, but most of all, the story of Shadow Generations. So, I'm going to waste no more time. We're going to get straight into this review, starting with a bit of the background about how this game came to be. So, before understanding Sonic X Shadow Generations, I think we should take a little mini step back and talk about Sonic Generations, which came out in 2011, and like I said before, was to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog. And it was a fantastic celebration. You got to play as two different variants of Sonic, both modern Sonic and classic Sonic, and you got to travel through a variety of different levels through previous games from Sonic 1, 2, 3, you had Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, and Sonic Colors, and defeat a variety of different villains as well from the past, which were really, really good, really nice to see. And so it encompassed everything that a Sonic fan would like, and so it was almost kind of a no-brainer that eventually it would probably get a bit of a remake or a remaster down the line in the future for people on the newer generations of consoles to be able to play these games. And so it was really, really happy that during Sony's PlayStation State of Play back on the 31st of January, I believe it was, earlier this year, they announced that they were planning a remaster of Sonic Generations, which they then titled Sonic X Shadow Generations, and it would basically encompass everything that came before. So it would still keep Sonic Generations true to itself, but it would give a few little updates, as I will discuss a little bit later in the gameplay section. But it would update it slightly, but still keep it true to form. But on top of updating it, it would also then throw in a brand new story, because this is technically the year of Shadow, as we got Sonic the Hedgehog 3 coming out later this year. And so they added in a brand new campaign focusing entirely on Shadow and his backstory. And in order to do that as well, we also got a bit of a prologue, a bit of there was a couple of animations that you were able to watch on YouTube, titled Sonic X Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings. There was 3 episodes, I believe, that was spread out over a couple of weeks or months. I can't quite remember now the dates, but they were to set you up for this game and tell you a little bit about Shadow's backstory for those who are not really familiar, and get you excited and hyped for this game when it got released. And they were all really thoroughly interesting, and then from playing the game, it all made sense. It was great. It was good to see, and I was quite happy to see that Sega and Sonic Team and all were actually promoting the game really, really well. So that was quite nice to see. And then obviously, this game eventually came out, and it's had, I would say it's had a fairly decent reception. I mean, I personally have enjoyed myself playing this game. I mean, it's still quite fresh in my mind, and I think the new campaign is short, but it's long enough to where it justifies the release, because I paid $39.99 for this game, which isn't actually too bad, considering what you do get. And it does come with a few extras, because this is the Day 1 edition, and it does come with an extra, which it includes Gerald Robotnik's journal. So I thought that was quite nice. So there's a little bit of a background into this game, but I think we need to delve quite deep into this game. So I think we're going to start with the gameplay for both the Sonic generations and also the Shadow generation story and see how it differs. Gameplay side of things when it comes to Sonic X Shadow Generations, not much changes on the Sonic Generations front. You still get your classic Sonic levels, which are like 2D side-scrollers with a little bit of 3D added in, and you still get your modern Sonic levels, which are your general boost formula, 3D levels, which is nice because especially for the classic stages, you get a whole new aspect of them. You get to see them from a whole new angle, which is really, really nice. And both classic and modern Sonic get to take on a variety of different foes, from like the Death Egg robot. You get to take on Shadow, Silver, Chaos. There's loads really in this game, and it's fantastic. Graphically, it's definitely a lot better. They've sharpened it up a lot more. And there's a few new extras within the Sonic Generations aspect. Like there's a couple of new collectibles, like Chow are now collectibles within the levels. You've got to save a couple of Chow per level. You don't really get anything from it, but it's nice to know they haven't really forgotten about the Chow. But yeah, so there's some extra collectibles for the Sonic Generations front. And yeah, you just work your way through the game. It is still fun, so if you haven't played Sonic Generations, I highly recommend playing Sonic Generations, first of all. But even if you have played the original Sonic Generations, it's still worth checking out the original game on this, because of the new collectibles. Some of the dialogue has also changed, but I'll describe that a little bit more within the story section. And also, like I said, there's new collectibles, and graphically it's a little bit better, so the levels look a little bit more crisp. So I would say it's definitely worth checking out the original anyway. I wouldn't blame you for playing the Shadow Generation story first. That's exactly what I did. But definitely check out Sonic Generations as well. But now, in terms of Shadow Generations, it's obviously like a whole new game, a whole new campaign built from the ground up. It reuses some classic stages, like Shadow gets to go to the Space Colony Arc, Rail Canyon, Kingdom Valley, Sunset Heights, Chaos Island, and Radical Highway, just to name the ones that you get to play as. Still has the challenge modes. The bosses you get to face are really interesting. The first boss you get to face is the Bio-Lizard from Sonic Adventure 2, who has loads of new stages, from the classic one where you're running along the ground and the head chases you, the tail whips you, and you grind on the side of him and hit him. It's really cool. But then they change it up a bit, and I like that, and they incorporate Chaos Control. He also faces Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes, where you use one of the new Doom powers, which I'll get onto very shortly, but that's really cool and a very good boss fight. And then you face Methalis from Sonic 06, which is really, really cool as well. Probably my least favourite of the bosses in the game, if I'm honest, but still cool to face him. And then in the end, you fight Black Doom, and you get to use all your Doom powers that you've accumulated throughout the level. So that's really neat. But like I said, yeah, Shadow also, like Classic and Mon Sonic, his levels are split into Act 1 and Act 2. So you get to do a Shadow level in the 3D aspect ratio, so you get to see it in 3D modern form, and then you get a classic side-scrolling format, which still has elements of 3D in there. But yeah, it's good that they kept that. His campaign also takes place in a hub overworld, but they've taken it from almost like Sonic Frontiers style. So it's, you can 3D, you can walk all around it. It's not just like a side scroller like the original game still is. So that's really nice. So you've got a little bit of exploring to do, where you can still get some more collectibles. Like you've got to help Orbot and Qbot build a rocket, and you've got to find all these screws and nuts and bolts, and you've got to collect like 80 of them. So there's stuff to do. But the biggest thing about the Shadow campaign in particular are the Doom powers. And I remember when the trailer dropped for the Doom powers, and they looked so cool. There's a couple of different Doom powers. There's Doom Spears, where Shadow will fire off all these spheres. You can fire like 5 or so at a time, and it will destroy shields, it will knock enemies back, and it will destroy them. It's cool. You've got Doom Wings, where you can fly through the air, but you've got to have like 50 rings or more to activate it in the first place. It's a little bit janky, probably my least favourite out of all the Doom powers, but it's still cool though, and it's cool to look at, especially if you've played Marvel Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac, Venom with wings, you'll see what I mean. Doom Surf, where he can glide along the water, that's really cool as well. Doom Morph, where he like transforms into this like squid octopusy looking creature, and he can climb up slimy gooey walls and through water that's like polluted with gooey substance. It's disgusting, but it's really cool to do, and it's probably my favorite of the powers, if I'm being perfectly honest. And then you've got typical chaos control, where you can freeze time, which is really good, especially if you're trying to go for those S ranks. Yeah, and that has helped me out quite a lot, because yeah, getting the S ranks in some of the shadow levels, especially Radical Highway, can be tough. But yeah, I'd say overall, the gameplay is pretty smooth, pretty solid, especially in the shadow levels. I loved it in particular, and it was nice to replay the Sonic Generations levels as well. So I don't really have much in terms of complaints. What I would say is that it did feel like you relied a little bit too much maybe on chaos control at times, and I feel like some of the Doom powers are really OP. In particular, like the Doom Wings, where you can actually fly through levels. It's fun, and I like the idea, and I definitely wouldn't remove it, but it can be a bit OP at times. But it is nice to change up the formula at the same time. So I'd say overall, I did really enjoy the gameplay in Sonic X Shadow Generations, and I would definitely highly recommend getting that for that reason. But now that we've discussed the gameplay, I think it's time that we delve deep into actually what the story of Sonic Generations is, and what the story of Shadow Generations is, and how it adds to the original story. We have the story within Sonic X Shadow Generations. Well, firstly, the Sonic Generations story. Well, obviously, as we know, Sonic Generations originally came out in 2011, and this was to celebrate 20 years of Sonic the Hedgehog in all ways, shape, or form. And so it made sense that for this game, it just so happened to be Sonic's birthday, which all his friends had gathered around for a party to celebrate his birthday, when all of a sudden this gigantic Time Eater creature, as we later know it as, magically appears and just takes all of Sonic's friends away, teleporting them to who knows where. Sonic is knocked unconscious, and when he awakes, he's in this white, endless plane with different areas from his past locked away in like colourless voids that he needs to then travel to restore light to the world, collect the Chaos Emeralds, and ultimately win. And along the way, he bumps into his classic counterpart, not only classic Sonic, but also classic Tails as well. And together they help to save the world, pretty much. And they travel all through different areas, starting, like I said, from the original Sonic the Hedgehog video game, all the way up to, at the time, the current Sonic game that had come out before Sonic Generations, being Sonic Colors. We find out in the end that Dr. Eggman is actually behind all the hijinks. He, after his loss in Sonic Colors, discovered this Time Eater creature and thought he could use it to undo his previous defeats, and so teamed up with his classic counterpart, Dr. Robotnik, to take out Sonic once and for all. But obviously that ultimately fails. Sonic ends up winning, and then everything goes back to how it is. And overall, the dialogue is mostly the same, but for this game they do change up little bits and pieces, and I know that has caused a little bit of controversy, as what they've changed it to does impact the story a little bit, and in my personal opinion, some of the changes are good, others not so good, and it removes a bit of the humour as well. And I don't know if anyone else has noticed this as well, but when I'm watching the cutscenes, it almost feels like they don't match the lips. And that's probably because of the dialogue changes and they didn't redo it. I don't know, but it just seems a bit off to me, so I'm not overly keen on the dialogue changes that they did, but I digress. But overall, that is the overall plot of Sonic Generations. A pretty simple plot, but that's all you need for a celebratory game celebrating 20 years of a franchise. Now, Shadow Generations is a little bit different. We had the prologue with Dark Beginnings setting up Shadow's backstory. And in Sonic X Shadow Generations, the Shadow campaign, he's on the Space Colony Ark as he's received a signal that there could be a potential threat. However, Rouge gets in contact with Shadow because she's down at the birthday party for Sonic. And basically says to Shadow, "Look, are you gonna come down now? The party's about to start. We need you here." And Shadow reinforces that he needs to be there to find out what's going on the Ark. Shadow does find out what's happening. We find out that Black Doom has returned, and is trying to claim Shadow's body in one way, shape, or form, either to make him the ultimate weapon, the ultimate life form, to conquer the world, conquer the universe, either by his side or to just possess him altogether. And so Shadow goes on his own little journey through the same white void that Sonic goes through and has to restore parts of his past, and he starts to collect these Doom powers in order to be strong enough to fight Black Doom at the end of the game. And that's pretty much what he does. And he has help from Gerald Robotnik and Maria, who were taken out of time from before the Space Colony Ark disaster, and help guide Shadow, help give him a bit of moral support, and comfort him, because Shadow is slowly getting corrupted by the Black Doom powers and has to try and resist them. And in the end, Shadow does collide with Sonic, as he does in the game, so it gives a bit of context as to why Shadow was fighting Sonic in Sonic Generations, because I always thought that was a bit weird. But there's a bit of context here. He just needs the Chaos Emerald to continue on his way to fight Black Doom. And then we get to see how Shadow joins Sonic and Classic Sonic at the end of the game, really, in the final fight. Because I did find it a bit weird that Shadow then joined Sonic, cheering him on at the end after you were just fighting each other. Bit weird, but this game and the Shadow campaign does solve all those mysteries. So I thought that was quite handy, really. And that sums up the Shadow story. He ultimately obviously beats Black Doom, regains his true self, finds himself. Unfortunately, has to say goodbye to Gerald Robotnik and to Maria, who have to go back to their proper place in time, so we know what's going to happen to them. But Shadow does make the right choice, and he goes to then help Sonic. And then pretty much the game just ends there. So that sums up the story for Shadow Generations. Again, simple, short, but sweet, and I really like it. So that sums up the story. Now, let me give you my final thoughts on the game. That's it. That is my review on the brand new Sonic X Shadow Generations game for the PlayStation 5. And overall, I thought it was actually a really fun game, but that's because I enjoy Sonic Generations anyway, and I'm a massive Sonic fan, so I've got a bit of a soft spot for Sonic overall. I would probably give this game an 8 out of 10, if I'm being perfectly honest, because Sonic Generations is a very fun and entertaining game through and through. Yes, sure, it's short and you can complete it in just a couple of hours, but it's fun, it's got good replayability, and now with the added Shadow campaign as well, there's even more reason to play it, because now you can play through a whole other campaign and experience new levels. And they even include some levels, like I said, there's a level from Sonic Frontiers in this, there's gameplay from Sonic Frontiers in this, and also they even take a level from Sonic Forces, so you've got some future Sonic games that weren't in the original Sonic Generations in this game as well, so even more reason to play it. But that is going to be my review. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up. Comment down below, did you get Sonic X Shadow Generations? What are your thoughts on the game? And subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nerdy Grail signing off. I hope you had an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.